Good afternoon, and thank you for joining for today's flood update. I'm Heather Fairbairn, and I will be your moderator for today. We have quite a cast of folks providing an update on the conditions across the province. Allow me to introduce them. Joining us today, we have Premier Tim Houston. We have Mark Peachey, Chief Engineer of Nova Scotia Department of Public Works. We have the Mayor of West Hants, Abraham Zebian. We have the Mayor of the Municipality of the District of Lunenburg, Carolyn Bolivar-Getson. We have the Mayor, Darlene Norman, of the region of Queens Municipality. We also have Erica Fleck, Director of Emergency Management and Community Safety with Halifax Regional Municipality, and as well Kelly Ash, Emergency Management Coordinator for the Municipality of East Hants. Joining us as well for questions will be Dave Pickles, Chief Operating Officer for Nova Scotia Power, and Paul Mason, Executive Director for Nova Scotia's Emergency Management Office. And with that, allow me to introduce the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston. Take it away.
I had a chance to chat with some of the amazing first responders involved in this search, and it wouldn't be hard for people to imagine the emotions that they are feeling. I can tell you that they're determined. They're focused on supporting the families. They're focused on a safe return of these four souls. To the families, you have an entire province praying for your loved one's safe return. I know to Nova Scotians, I know so many of you want to help. It's the Blue Noser way. But again, given the treacherous conditions, the RCMP continues to ask people to stay away from the area so no one's put at risk and so that they can focus on their rescue efforts with the incredible first responders that are there. It's almost impossible for me to think about anything else right now. But after touring some of the impacted areas last night and again this afternoon, all I can really say is thank you to our incredible first responders. They're taking very heroic measures and they're entering into dangerous situations to keep us safe. I had a chance to speak with a number of them. I've heard the stories and I've seen what they're doing. There's a story about firefighters rescuing someone from fast-running water. The person had climbed 15 feet into a tree and jumped down into the rescue boat when the two firefighters arrived on the way to shore. The boat overturned, putting all three of them in incredible danger. I spoke directly with these firefighters and their colleagues. Everyone got to shore safely. They saved the person. They're absolute heroes. They're not alone. There was hundreds of calls. Hundreds of calls were flooding in for help Friday night and Saturday. And they responded time and time again. We're so lucky to have selfless people like you out there looking out for us. So thank you for that. And it's not just first responders. I spoke with one family yesterday who were traveling along a road and saw a group of people waving to them. At first, they kind of thought they were just waving to them, but when they stopped, they found out these people were actually were trapped. It's all so surreal, some of these things that are happening, but they were able to get some help and get those people out safely. So it's stories like this that make me proud to be Nova Scotian. To see people helping one another in the worst of times, in the most dangerous of times. So thank you to everyone going above and beyond. In terms of an update, our focus is solely on the missing people. But suffice it to say that the water levels are still high in many impacted areas, but they're starting to recede. The main risks at this point are, of course, with our transportation challenges. We have approximately 25 bridges impacted across the province. 19 have been damaged. Investigations continue on that. But six of those bridges were just completely destroyed. And it's incredible to see the force of the water and the impact it's had. We're working quickly, as quickly as possible, to get our roads open. I know last night the 101 was opened overnight. On the 103, between exits 8 and 10 have been reopened. Trunks 10 and 12 will reopen at some point today. It's just the effort that's going in to get these roads back open is absolutely incredible. There's a significant infrastructure damage across the province, but we'll get there. We have the right people working on it. In my travels last night and today, I saw public works crews, private contractors, DNR crews, and many others that just had their heads down. They're doing whatever they possibly could to get roads opened, and in some places to get people to safety. There are still some people that are stranded, but please continue to use caution if you're traveling. Listen to local police. Pay attention to your emergency alerts. Public Works will be able to answer questions on specific structures. But there are still somewhere between 500 and 600 people evacuated across the province. Municipalities may have some more up-to-date information on what's happening directly in their area. We'll continue to work closely with the municipalities. And we know that there's a lot of anxiety over the damage that has been sustained to people's property and to their homes. We submitted our initial request for disaster financial assistance to the federal government last night. This is a program that can be very helpful. It can help cover costs that are uninsurable. So we're listening, we're watching in an effort to see what people need. And if we can do something, if we can create a program or tailor an existing program to help, we will be there. Spent a lot of time in the last couple of days with Ministers Kim Masland, John Lohr, and Tory Rushton. They've been working tirelessly to make sure that the department staff have what they need to keep you safe. And I know Minister Rushton, for example, was very focused on ensuring that everyone who was trapped at Smiley's campground made it out safely, and they did. And his team at Natural Resources was successful in that endeavor, and many others. MLA Melissa Sheehy-Richard, she had to paddle her way out to safety on Saturday morning. She hasn't slowed down yet. I'll be out tonight with East Hants, in East Hants with MLA John A. McDonald. He's been doing an incredible job. So people are stepping out. People are stepping up. Nova Scotians are stepping up. Please keep an eye out for your neighbors and for any vulnerable people that you're aware of. I want to close by again extending my prayers for those that are missing. The search continues for 4 loved ones, and I know we're all praying for the families and for their return. Thank you.
Thank you for that very important update, Premier. Now we'll move along to Mark Peachey, Chief Engineer with Nova Scotia's Department of Public Works. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. The Department of Public Works continues to make progress on both assessing and fixing damage across the province. We've been able to reopen some roads, and some other work has already been completed. For example, as the Premier mentioned, Highway 101 has been fully reopened. Trunk 3 near Chester has been reopened. Trunk 10 and Trunk 12 in the western portion of the province are expected to be open later today. Bridge work that isolated the community of Eller's House has now been completed. And there are about 400 people isolated at a motocross track in East Hants because of bridge damage. Staff are currently on site now building a temporary bridge that should be complete tonight so those people can leave that area. Those are just a few examples. We don't have a full assessment of the situation as of yet. In some cases, we're going to need to do additional engineering work. It's going to take time, but everyone should be able to get where they need to go in the coming days. Projects are being prioritized by need as much as possible. We're using every staff member, every piece of equipment that we've got. In some cases, we will need to bring in local contractors, and we've already done so to help address more urgent issues more quickly. I know that delays and detours can be very frustrating to the motoring public. I speak for everyone who's out on the roads working on bridges, roads. We're grateful for your patience and understanding as we work through this process, and we'll be continuing to work as quickly as we can to get everything reopened. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Mark. Now we'll check in with our municipal partners, starting with Mayor Abraham Zebian for the Municipality of the Region of West Hants. Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Yesterday was a very busy, active day here in West Hants. Again, our municipality was greatly impacted by the storms. It was a joint effort, Nova Scotia TIR, RCMP, GSAR, Ground Search and Rescue, municipal staff, EMO, everybody was hands on deck. All hands were on deck yesterday, trying to identify roads, washouts, bridge washouts, shoulders, trying to evacuate people safely and efficiently as we could. A huge thank you to all of our fire departments, ground search and rescue, municipal staff, provincial staff, residents coming out to help. It's quite inspiring to see people step up when we need everybody to step up. Our CMP as well. Great efforts all around. And municipal infrastructure, we held up pretty good. We have crews out today, just cleaning up, checking on things, making sure everything is running and is okay. Provincial infrastructure here in West Hants was greatly impacted. Again, a lot of roads, a lot of bridges, shoulders. Again, it's a lot safer today. We were blessed by God's blessing with a little nicer weather today and last night, so it allowed people to clean up. People are on the ground, patching up their driveways, getting them connected again, calling their insurance companies. We did have a glitch in the 911 system today, the provincial 911 system that sent out another evacuation alert. So we were busy this morning trying to get out news to people that was a glitch, and we do sincerely apologize to people for that one. It just it got emotions a little higher early this morning again. It's been trying times. Again, I was on the ground last night, early Saturday morning, 3 a.m. Helped some people get out. We had the St. Croix Activation Center in Brooklyn, had about 100 families, 100 households impacted there. We had about 25, 30 from the Falmouth-Windsor area for the evacuation zone. We do still have four of our residents are still missing currently. We've dedicated a lot of resources today to help find those families. Sorry, we're doing everything we can. Our heart, our prayers are going out to those families, and I just want them all to know that we're with you. And I know West Hansers, they're very proud. They want to step and they want to help. They want to help out, but your best help today is to stay home and offer your prayers and your thoughts to those families. We do have professionals on the ground helping locate those 4 individuals, and we're going to remain optimistic, and we're not going to give up. Again. Our hearts are with them, and I want to thank all the emergency service personnel, EMO, RCMP, fire departments, municipal staff. It's been overwhelming, but they made it a lot better than what it would have been without them. So Nova Scotia Power is out restoring power. People have been allowed to go back to their homes if it's safe to do so. I know a lot have gone to family and friends this place because it's a little hard for them to get back to their personal homes. Again, thank the province, thank the Premier. He was down yesterday touring the areas. It's greatly appreciated. I know I heard a lot of comments from residents who saw him and Minister Laura down. So again, thank you to them as well.
Thank you for that, Mayor. And please know that all of Nova Scotians are with you and your residents and their families. We'll now check in with Mayor Carolyn Bolivar-Getson with the Municipality of the District of Lunenburg. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. The Municipality of the District of Lunenburg has lifted the state of local emergency for the area around Fancy Lake, including the land situated on the Conquerall Mills Road, from William Hebb Road to the Conquerall Road to Highway 103 and Century Drive. The water in the lake remains 18 inches above the normal operating level for the Public Service Commission Hebb Lake Dam, but it is no longer rising and remains stable. So that is good news. Evacuation orders have been rescinded and residents are free to return to their homes if it is safe to do so. So that's 440 households are allowed to return home, but should be alert to changes and continue to be prepared to evacuate on short notice, should the situation change. As favorable weather appears to be on our side, the evacuation center will close today at 5 p.m. We encourage residents to have patience with work crews who are working to get things back to normal. We understand how frustrating this situation is, and staff are working around the clock to repair these situations, but repairs do take time. We continue to deal with road closures and compromised infrastructure systems. Transportation and public works are working tirelessly to get things back to normal. Municipal parks and trails will remain closed until such time that we can do a full assessment on them and make sure they are safe for the public to reuse. We still have displaced residents and will continue to work with the Red Cross to address their housing needs. Our 100 series highway remains closed between exit 7 and 8. And we still do have power outages in our areas that have significant washouts. We continue to pray for the safe return of the 4 missing persons, and our thoughts are with their loved ones. I'd also like to thank the Red Cross, Lunenburg County Search and Rescue, the RCMP, the fire departments, community volunteers, REMO, municipal staff, and everyone else who have stepped up to make sure that their neighbors are safe and that things return to normal as quickly as possible. Our sincerest thanks to all of you who came together to lend a helping hand to make a difference when our community needed you most. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mayor. We'll now move along to Mayor Darlene Norman with the Region of Queens Municipality. Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you, and good day, everyone, and respects to you, Mayor Abrams. In keeping with the time, today is a great day in Queens. We luckily averted the potential of dam breaches yesterday. Nova Scotia Power keep a very close eye on those dam levels, and while they were at maximum levels, and we did issue a get your go bag ready and be ready to go for a mandatory evacuation. Luckily, we were able to divert that. TRI have been excellent in repairing roads as quickly as possible. Today, by noontime, they had a closed road. St. Catharines River Road in Port Jolly was reopened. Yesterday, there were 44 residents in that area that were cut off. We were able to make contact with some good citizens down there who did a door-to-door knock campaign, identified any health issues, who was staying in the area. Many people in those areas were tourists and staying at accommodations. Thank you to our 2 fire departments who responded with their boats and were ready for any evacuations. We had 2 evacuation centers open. There are still some spotted power outages throughout Queens, but for all in all, our infrastructure did not sustain as much damage, it appears, as Lunenburg and fellow partners in West Hants. So we just are fortunate, again, to Nova Scotia Power for keeping such a close eye on those dams, which, as we know, there's 6 of them, 100-year-old plus. And anyway, but all in all, we're safe in Queens and everyone made it home. So
That's good news. Thank you, Mayor. And now we'll go to Erica Fleck, Director of Emergency Management and Community Safety for the Halifax Regional Municipality.
Thanks very much, Heather, and good afternoon. Like everyone else, I'd like to offer our thoughts and prayers to the families and, of course, our neighbors in West Hants. And, our heart goes out to all of you. So a few updates from HRM. We still have over 200 residents currently displaced, and that number continues to fluctuate because we still have ongoing issues. So we just like to remind residents to shelter in place as much as they can. And we understand, that it's frustrating we understand the implications of asking you to do so, but it is for safety reasons. So currently we have over 300 municipal service requests in for roads, culverts, shoulders. And that doesn't include all of the work that we have to do with our partners at Halifax Water and of course the province of Nova Scotia. So we expect that to be, multiply in the days to come. Our biggest issue right now is that the water levels did not recede in a lot of places, and we can't continue to do assessments until those water levels go down. So in some areas, we have bridges that are well over 5 feet underwater, and we have to be able to do structural assessments once the water goes down to normal levels to know if it's safe to be able to traverse over those bridges and other structures. I'd like to ask, and remind people not to call 911 unless it's an emergency. Our call takers are being inundated with calls that, please to let us know about a road being washed out or that, they may not be able to get out of their house. Our 311 system is fully functioning. We are logging all calls, mapping all of the information given to us. And we continue to ask for everybody's patience, but please stop calling 911 for non-emergency items. And the last thing is that HRM is closing a lot of offices tomorrow and asking our workers to remain home so that we lessen the traffic and the risk with pulling people back in onto the roads that are still unsafe. And we have a ton of detours obviously in place that can all be found online. And that's it for me. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you, Erica. And we'll do our final check-in with Kelly Ash, Emergency Management Coordinator for the Municipality of East Hants. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thanks, Heather. I want to say thank you for allowing me to participate again today. As everyone else has said, our council and all the residents of East Hants are thinking of the families of the missing people in West Hants. Warden Eleanor Rolston has been meeting with members of the press throughout the day, so my briefing will be pretty short. Due to some large power outages in the Milford area, McVee's Corner, and Mill Village, a comfort center was activated at the Upper Non-Mile River Community Hall. It will remain open until 6 p.m. this evening. We are still working with the province, as Mark Peachey said, for the bridge collapse on North Salem Road. We also heard that it would be accessible by the end of the day today, so that is really great news to hear. Belcourt, we had a municipal road that was closed in our area yesterday. The water has cleared and receded in that area, so our road is now open. Due to some of the power outages that we have in the Milford area, our wastewater teams are still working really hard to keep the lift stations going. We have had a request for assistance into the province for a generator so that we can hook it up to one of our lift stations, but we have to assess the panel first before we can determine if we can actually use it. There has been substantial damage to the provincial road infrastructure, like nothing we've ever experienced before, as Mark has stated. We have many homes that are cut off from accessing trunk highways, leaving subdivisions, and dead-end roads without any alternate access. We truly appreciate all of our provincial partners continuing to make these roads a priority. We are relying on 511 to be updated by the province in order to keep our residents informed. As we mentioned yesterday, our East Hants Aquatic Center was flooded and it will be closed for an indefinite period of time until the damage can be fully assessed. There's also been some substantial flooding in our Elmsdale and Lance areas. Several local businesses have been impacted, and a portion of Highway 2 remains closed until those floodwaters dissipate. As other municipalities have said, our residents are resilient. People are looking after each other, and they've stepped up to help out others where help is needed, which is what we hope for. And everything that I've talked about today and much more can be found on our Storm Center page of our website. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you for that, Kelly. Okay, now we'll go to the Q&A portion of today's update, and I'll just remind media, we will stick with our one question, one follow-up format. And in addition to our panel of participants that you've heard remarks from, we do also have participating for your questions, Dave Pickles with Nova Scotia Power, and of course, Paul Mason with Nova Scotia's Emergency Management Office. And I'll just remind our panelists as well, if I will ask the media to indicate who their question is for, but if one of our panelists would like to add something to that response or take a question, please don't hesitate to speak up or put your hand up. And so without further ado, let's check in with Aaron Bezic with the Chronicle Herald. Go ahead, Aaron.
I'm good. I think all my questions were answered, so thank you.
Wow, amazing. That's great. Then let's move along to Keith Doucette with the Canadian Press. Keith?
Oh, hi, can you hear me?
I can, yes, thanks. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's anything that's proving to be a great challenge that you didn't foresee out of this. I know it's kind of an open-ended question, but can anybody chime in? Is there something unusual that's come up here that we haven't seen before that we're having to deal with now?
Who'd like to start off with that one?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, thanks, Keith. I mean, certainly the incredible volume of rain that we received in such a short period of time, that's certainly unusual. It came fast, it came furious. But I think for me, like just working closely with the teams, having a kind of a close view on the effort that's happening. From the department staff to the network of first responders. I think we're just reminded that Nova Scotia is a busy place in the summer with the campgrounds and visitors here, right? So making sure that people were accounted for was a big task, and it was a very stressful task. A lot of focus was on that, first thing Saturday through the night Friday, but certainly first thing Saturday morning, and I mean the effort that went into that was pretty incredible. But I think just the damage, the infrastructure damage, the bridges, the roads, in some cases, freshly paved road pavement just peeled right back. I mean that's a shocking thing to see. But just the intensity of the water, and certainly, I mean, the missing souls we have as a result of that water intensity, and how quick it all happens, and how fragile all of this really is. And it's just, I don't know that that's a kind of a surprise or unforeseen, but it's certainly been a very, very strong reminder.
Would anybody else like to chime in on that, or I'll move along?
I'd just like to highlight again the 511 system and the updates on road passability, etc. I know a lot of residents here in West Hants trying to get to an evacuation center and coming up to areas where they thought they would be able to pass, which they weren't able to, and some newer to our community who don't know all the ins and outs of all the back roads and connections. So the importance of having that updated regularly, and speaking to some of the TIR guys on the ground. There's only so many of them, and God love them. I know them all personally. It's just if there's ever any help that's needed from the municipal side, we have a lot of resources as well, and we know our roads like the back of our hands. We've offered here in West Hants to help with that as well, and let them know where there's some problems and what are still open and whatnot. So just that was a little surprise to us here in our community, and again, as Premier said, a lot of water very quickly. It's as well as we are prepared. It's hard to keep ahead of Mother Nature on those situations.
That's a good point. Keith, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I do. For Public Works, are there any reports of any major damages in eastern Nova Scotia and Cape Breton? We've heard about basically west of that. Is there any update there?
Hi, Keith. Thanks for the question. In the northern and eastern portions of the province, we've had to date limited amount of damage. There's been some localized flooding, obviously, and some washouts of a couple of culverts that we've heard about, but no significant infrastructure damage at this point.
Okay, moving along, we'll go to CBC's Jean Laroche. Go ahead, Jean.
Thanks, Heather. My question kind of follows on that. Mark Peachey, could you talk a little bit about the kind of the plan to ensure that culverts, bridges, roads are safe? Because in a lot of places that I was traveling the highways and byways of Lunenburg County, it wasn't always evident that a road had been undermined or could have been undermined. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Jean. As this is unfolding, obviously, it's a dynamic situation. There are some places where there's still high levels of water, and we aren't able to access locations and see some damage. There are areas where there could very well be undermining of some of the asphalt where shoulders have washed away, and our staff are out observing and monitoring this and trying to get to as many places they can as quickly as they can, and they mark them with cones or whatever as they go. So our staff are on the ground, they are looking, and we're moving forward as quickly as possible.
Go ahead with your follow-up, Sean.
Thank you. Mine's for the Premier. Premier, you've heard the city say that they are asking their workers to stay home to keep the way clear for the people who need to fix what needs fixing. What is your order to workers, provincial workers?
Yeah, it'd be the similar situation. We just ask people, you know, it's common sense for sure, but we ask people to, you know, through the government, we just ask, you know, people to talk to the people that they work with and their managers. But it's common sense. I mean, if we can limit travel, especially through the affected areas, of course we want to do that.
And moving along, we'll go to the Toronto Star with Steve McKinley. Go ahead, Steve.
Hi there. Question for Premier Houston, I guess, and anyone else who wants to chime in. Disaster financial assistance. Do we have an idea of a ballpark idea of how much this is going to cost in the grand scheme of things, and how much we've applied for under that disaster financial assistance program?
Not really, a lot. Certainly, when you think of, you know, the infrastructure damages, 25 bridges, 6 destroyed. Just the road, certainly that's on the government side, but then at the individual level, like some of these homes, the water damage in homes, the damage on properties that, you know, would be uninsured or uninsurable otherwise is significant. So we don't have a number, but this is certainly in the tens of millions, could be in the hundreds of millions when it's all said and done.
Go ahead with your follow-up, Steve.
Yeah, I guess again for Public Works, we've had, I think it's 2 or 3 dams that were in danger of breaching. Do we have any idea if any damage was caused to those dams, or is it too early to assess that?
It's my understanding there's approximately 60 dams across the province, of which approximately 4. We only own 4, and I have no information on those dams at this time.
Thank you.
Moving along, we'll go to Brian Flynn with All Nova Scotia. Go ahead, Brian.
Keep you busy, Mark Peachey. A question for you as well. I'm just wondering, my friend Jean Laroche, you were talking to earlier, posted a photo today of a washout on Highway 103. It looked like it was between exits 8 and 9. And the road is open, but it's down to 1 lane at that point. It kind of made me wonder, how many places in Nova Scotia are roads or bridges severely damaged like that? I guess the Premier already mentioned the bridges, but how many places are roads damaged like that? I realize you probably don't have a full list at this time, but if you could just give us sort of your best estimate.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. As you said, there are a number of roads across the province that have been washed out, specifically in the central and western regions. We don't have a full assessment yet, but it's north of 50 roads for sure. The report that I had earlier today was in the 50 range, and there are areas where the waters are still high, so we may that number may increase.
Right.
Go ahead with your follow-up, Brian.
Thank you. And I have a question also for Mayor Zebian. I'm just wondering, Mayor, if you could tell us how severe is the flooding in downtown Windsor, and do you have any sort of understanding of what caused the flooding? Was that caused by Lake Pisiquid?
Yep, downtown Windsor, mainly along Gray Street, Stanish Street, Albert Street, that area. So these are historically flooding prone areas, not so much to do with Lake Pisiquid, to be honest with you. It's just low-lying areas. It seems the whole topography of the community of Windsor drains down into this little section where our community center is, Victoria Park, Elmcroft Park. So past weather events a couple of years ago, when we had a flash flood or a very large amount of rain in a very quick period of time, just overwhelms our municipal infrastructure, and just we can't drain water quick enough. So that was the primary cause of the flooding in that little isolated part of Windsor, not so much to do with Lake Pisiquid. again, the water level was very high. Some of the water did come up to the canoe club area and closer to our park and trails area. But again, that is receding. But again, thank God, no properties really affected on that. We did evacuate Water Street just for precautions, but I wouldn't attribute it to Lake Biscuit.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And next we'll go to the Laker with Pat Healy. Go ahead, Pat. Pat, are you there? We'll come back with Pat. Let's move along to the Globe and Mail, Frederick to Hamill. Frederick?
Hi, I was wondering first if evacuees, given the state of the roads, I was wondering if people who were told to evacuate yesterday or Friday night ran into issues while trying to reach evacuation centers. Was that an issue, or was that planned ahead? How did that work?
Who wants to take that question?
I can start, I guess, with the mandatory evacuation that we issued around the Fancy Lake area. There are roads that are down to one lane in certain spots, but there was an alternate route for people to get out. So they were able to do that safely.
Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add to that? Okay, Frederick, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, sure. I spoke with a few experts in climate adaptation today. They told me that it would be important to rebuild that in a manner that would be more resilient, but especially to avoid places that are vulnerable to extreme events like floodplains, and that places like Sackville, there were construction in the floodplain. So is this going to be something that officials will look at as infrastructure is rebuilt, as homes are rebuilt after this catastrophe? And how will we ensure that infrastructure is more resilient in the future?
Who's your question for, Frederick?
I guess Premier Houston.
Thanks so much for the question, and yeah, there's constant assessment of the impact on climate change on our communities, on our province, on the world, really, as we look at how can we keep people safe and property safe. So that's a constant process. I mean, we'll go through. There'll be a debrief on this with the municipalities as well. But certainly right now it's obvious. We've had some, I guess in the 18 or 19 months that I've had the privilege of being in this chair, we had significant flooding in Cape Breton, then we had Hurricane Fiona, then we had devastating fires. Now we have these floods now where we're still searching for 4 people. So certainly, the impacts of Mother Nature on our province have been obvious to everyone, and we'll continue to assess what we can do to keep people safe going forward.
Thank you for that. Let's circle back to see if we can get Pat Healy. Pat, are you having any mic issues?
Hello?
There you are.
Hello. Okay, now you can hear me. All right. This question I think is for Erica. There's some pretty significant damage done in the Fall River Fletcher's Lake area. On Fall River Road, there's rocks, gravel all over the road, and some washouts. On Holland Road, there is a huge washout cutting off some of the residents from getting home without going further up the road. What is the timeline to get crews out there to repair those? And I think the question's for Erica.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks, Pat, for your question. So, Fall River isn't the only area. Again, we have hundreds of those. The smaller ones, it's probably more like closer to 1,000, to be honest, with debris scattered from the water. I haven't driven on a road yet coming back and forth to work with, some amount of debris across a road in the Bedford-Sackville Fall River area. So the crews are Crews have been out since it's been safe to do so, with no thunder and lightning. And they've been out there constantly, and our roads the work is being prioritized based on a number of factors. But, obviously emergency access routes, main arteries, but then not only that, but it's, roads that cut off into subdivisions and work like that. So there are a number of number one priorities. And it's, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to take some time based on the water levels and the inspections and the assessments. And it's just not that simple. So even when the water levels go down in certain areas, we still need structural engineers to be able to look at, items like bridges to be able to see if they're safe to even open. So there's a lot of work. And unfortunately, we just can't give any timelines right now, other than the crews are working as hard and as fast as they can.
Thank you for that. Pat, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. This one is for EMO. What should residents do if they have a flooded basement? What steps should they take?
Paul, are you going to start with that?
Yeah, basically, the advice we would give folks, and there's certainly many people across Nova Scotia that have experienced flooded basements or other damage. The first step would really be to reach out to their insurer, have a discussion around the type of coverage that they have, so they can begin that process in order to try to mitigate any of the damages which those floods have done to their homes.
Dave from Nova Scotia Power, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I know we've had a lot of even our own employees that have been impacted. I know several have reached out that have had floods in their basements, and certainly ensuring that it's safe to access the area. And if you're uncomfortable with accessing it, calling the Nova Scotia Power and getting your power disconnected before stepping into that water would be my recommendation.
Great, thank you for that. And let's move along now to CTV's Stephen Wenzel.
Thank you. My first question is for Erica Fleck. So you noted during yesterday's briefing that HRM helped unhoused people with emergency accommodations during the flooding on Friday night. Just looking for some more details about the support provided. How many people actually accessed those emergency accommodations?
I'm going off the top of my head, so this may not be correct, but I know we were over capacity at one of the shelters in the Sackville area. So that was when the Ball Diamond, those experiencing homelessness normally at the Ball Diamond, so they were pulled out. And then some again diverted to some space in Halifax that was made available by the province. So I think it was about 15, but I'd have to go back on my notes and again check with the province and the service providers. And as of this afternoon, the update is that they're all back in their normal, settled back in their normal places, and they were given new sleeping bags, some gift cards to go to Tim Hortons coffee and things like that. And the wraparound services are still being provided ongoing on those sites.
Thank you. Steve, do you have a follow-up?
Sure. Yes, Premier. The most recent spending by your Department of Environment and Climate Change was $56,000 of taxpayer money on a 2-week ad campaign against the carbon tax. Those ads were pulled prematurely after Elections Nova Scotia expressed concerns about interference in the upcoming Preston by-election. After the third severe weather event in Nova Scotia in under a year, do you think it's time to stop fighting the carbon tax and start fighting the climate crisis?
I think it's time to fight the climate crisis. There's no question that our climate is changing. There's absolutely no question that there's a role for government. There's also absolutely no question in my mind that the carbon tax won't help fight the climate change in a province like Nova Scotia. The reasons for that are as follows. We have a very rural province. People have to drive. You can put as much tax as you want on the price of gasoline, but people have to drive. For people in my community, public transit to work, not an option. For people in many parts of rural Nova Scotia, putting your son or daughter on your bicycle and driving to hockey practice, not an option. Taking them to dance practice on your bike, not an option. Walking, not an option. They still have to drive. So you can make the price of fuel as expensive as you want, but we have to get around our province. So if you're not changing the behavior, if people continue to drive as much with the carbon tax as they would have driven before, then how are you protecting the planet? What are you doing to actually mitigate climate change in that? And that's an example. You're not. They're still driving. All you're doing is making life much less affordable for people. In a province like Nova Scotia, and with our climate, people are going to heat their homes. So we have a number of people in Nova Scotia use home heating oil. We have a number of programs designed to try to get them off home heating oil. We work with the federal government on a number of those programs. But guess what they're still going to do over the course of the winter? Heat their home. You can make it expensive. You can make it so it's unaffordable for them to heat their home, but they still want to heat their home. So the climate changes are very real. We acknowledge them. We see them every day. Since I've been in this Premier's chair, as I mentioned earlier, it hasn't really been that long. My hair is a little grayer than it was just 19 or 20 months ago, but just in that time, serious flooding in Cape Breton. Hurricane Fiona, massive devastation across many parts of this province, northern Nova Scotia. Fires, devastating fires. We're still trying to get through and to respond to Hurricane Fiona and clean up. We're still trying to, what the fire situation is still, look at the impact on people's lives. And now here we are today with more flooding. So the evidence is all around that our climate is changing. I don't know that you can find anyone who doesn't think the climate is changing. I don't know that you can really find anyone who thinks that there's not a role for government in doing what they can to mitigate climate change and keeping our citizens safe. Of course, government wants to do that. I just don't think that the carbon tax is the right tool in a province like Nova Scotia. But I have a good idea of what the right tool was. We submitted a very, very fulsome climate action plan to the federal government. It was called Better Than a Carbon Tax. I'd encourage you to take a look at that if you want to know how I feel about climate change, if you want to know how our government feels about climate change. I'd encourage you to take a look at that. You would look through that and you would see some of the very meaningful opportunities that we presented to the federal government on how we could work together to fight climate change. Meaningful opportunities like tapping into our offshore wind potential. We have incredible offshore wind speeds. The potential, we have world-class offshore wind speeds. And imagine that in a country like Canada, in an entire country like Canada, with our vast coastlines and shorelines, zero offshore wind, zero. Why is that? You don't have to go too far around the world to find lots of offshore wind. France, Scotland, I've seen it with my own eyes and been there and talked to them. So we went to the federal government and said, why don't we work together to try and get some offshore wind potential to help green our grid? They weren't interested in that at that time. We were reliant on them for regulations. Look at the potential we have in this province in hydro, the Bay of Fundy. What an asset the Bay of Fundy is. Incredible, incredible. You could take every single river in the world and add them together, and you might come close to the strength of the Bay of Fundy. Imagine when we can tap into the Bay of Fundy to create energy, green hydrogen, energy that's green, that the world wants, that we can be providing from right here in Nova Scotia. And yet we have a number of projects on the go just trying to do exactly that. Sustainable Marine is an example that comes to mind. They were shut down by the federal government when we should be working together to really tap into these sources of energy. So, look, I think a carbon tax is it's a blunt instrument, and sometimes the issue with blunt instruments is they don't work for everyone. And I would encourage anyone who thinks that type of a blunt instrument in a province like Nova Scotia, I'd encourage them to get out around and to speak to Nova Scotians and say, can you change your behaviors? Can you drive less? Can you just put your home just a little bit cooler in the wintertime? I would encourage those types of discussions with Nova Scotians. And then I'd encourage those people, to go to the federal government and say, what about this plan that Nova Scotia put forward? It was fulsome. It actually could have had meaningful impacts on protecting our planet and fighting climate change. But that plan was rejected. And you know why it was rejected? Because it didn't include a carbon tax. There was only one thing the federal government wanted, and that was a carbon tax. What we actually want in our government is to protect the planet. What we actually want is to protect Nova Scotians and the livelihood that we have here, and make sure that life remains affordable for Nova Scotians while we preserve our planet for future generations. It's completely possible. So do I think that the carbon tax is the right tool in Nova Scotia? Not a chance. Do Nova Scotians think that the carbon tax is the right tool for them to help do what they can to preserve the planet? Not a chance. Do they know that there are other things that can be done? Absolutely. Nova Scotians, by their very nature, are environmentalists. By their very nature, they do what they can to preserve the planet. If you talk to foresters and farmers and fishers and those in the traditional industries, they're environmentalists. That's the way that they maintain their livelihood, and that's the way that they pass their livelihood on down to the generations that follow, to their kids and to their grandkids, by preserving the land, by using the tactics that they can. I'll take you to lobster wharfs, and you can talk to fishermen who voluntarily cut the number of traps so they can preserve the stocks. This is not new to Nova Scotians, but what Nova Scotians like is common sense approaches to issues. So those that will continue to push for a blunt instrument like a carbon tax that may work in downtown Toronto, may work in other big cities where they have vast opportunities for public transit, just don't work here in rural Nova Scotia. So encourage those who want to push that. Go and talk to Nova Scotians and ask them what's possible. I've done it, and I presented that plan to the federal government. They just didn't like it. It's way better than a carbon tax, and I wish they would listen to me.
We have about 5 minutes left. Tim Bousquet with the Halifax Examiner. If you can go quick, get your two questions in.
Very quickly, and I guess it's for the Premier, but maybe for the TRA guy, I don't know. We're hearing lots of information about washouts on the CN rail line connecting to the Port of Halifax, and I'm just wondering, do we have an update on that? What's the damage and what's the timeline for reconstruction, and what does that mean in terms of port operations?
But I'll take an initial step. Certainly we're aware of the extensive damage in parts of the line. It's a big concern for us for sure. We know the importance of that train system, that rail line. Obviously, it's been that connection has been the topic of a number of discussions as of late, as we talk about the isthmus and the value of goods and products and the importance of goods and products that travel in and out of our province across the isthmus, many of which across rail. So now here we are with a kind of a situation on the rail line there. So I don't have a fulsome briefing on the time to repair it, and I don't have the numbers on the cost of that, but certainly this would be something that CN would be very, very focused on, as rightfully so.
I can add to that a little bit too. We're aware of that outage at the Emergency Management Office. We've been in discussions with CN around it. They're actively working on it now, particularly the washout in the Truro area. We don't have a specific timeline on resolution, but we do expect that in the next few days. So that is being actively worked on by CN.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Tim, your final question.
Yeah, a quick follow-up with Paul Mason and Erica Fleck. No criticism implied of the job you're doing, but the Premier has said that there's been, he's listed all the disasters that come, and I'm wondering if you feel that you have adequate resources. During the fires, Erica Fleck was photoed sleeping in her office, which speaks to her dedication. But I wonder if that's the best way to approach emergencies, having one very overtaxed DMO. And if you could just speak to the needs of your office.
I can certainly lead off here on the provincial level. The core kind of functionality that we bring to the table when we have these events, and as you noted, there's certainly been quite a number of them fairly recently, is really a coordinating value from the perspective of the provincial government. So we have a provincial coordination center, which we operate here in our headquarters, which is activated during events like this and some of the other ones. And we really bring all those various resources of the provincial government into, in effect, a single room so that we can look at some of the challenges that these events create in a holistic manner. We work closely with our municipal partners and also our partners like CN and others in the private sector in order to respond as holistically as possible. It can certainly be taxing when these large events go on for a number of days, but we're able to draw on the resources of the provincial government to ensure that these challenges created by these events are addressed as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Erica, did you want to quickly add to that in the last remaining moments that we have?
Sure. I would say, emergency management has obviously changed over the past couple of decades. And, with our new CEO for HRM, she started in January, within her first 6 months, we've had an unprecedented wildfire and now, biblical proportions of rain, as the mayor said yesterday. So we are growing and changing. And, that's why she moved us to a brand new business unit called Community Safety, because she understands that the emergency management program has to grow and continue to grow as HRM population grows. And of course, the risks and hazards increase with climate change and other issues.
Thank you for that. And that is all the time we have today. Concludes the update. I would like to thank all of our participants for joining us to share their knowledge and insights with all of Nova Scotia. Thank you so much.